Well, hello everybody and good morning. Welcome to our Climate and Water Update webinar for Spring 2018. For those joining us for the first time, welcome. And for anyone who joined us for our water-related webinars in June, welcome back. Today we'll be discussing recent climate conditions over winter, also the Spring 2018 outlooks for temperature, rainfall and stream flow. So let's begin. My name is Claire Mullen and I'm delighted to be your moderator today. Caroline is our producer and will help moderate your questions. Hi Caroline.
Hi Claire, how are you?
Going well. Please send your questions through the chat function and we will address as many as we can. Before we start, may I ask for your attention as we cover off some housekeeping items. Our broadcast today will run for 45 minutes with plenty of time allocated for questions. This webinar is also being recorded and the video will be shared with you via email. For first-time webinar attendees, please see some helpful tips on your screen. Please note the chat box where you can send through any questions or feedback for the presenter. Please send your questions to us during the session and we will answer as many as possible during the allotted breaks. The conversation isn't just confined to the webinar. We welcome interaction on LinkedIn too. Don't forget to include #BOMWebinars in your posts. And finally, I am delighted to introduce to you our presenters, Robin Jewell and Catherine Ganter. Hi ladies.
Hi.
Robin and Catherine both work in the climate prediction team at the Bureau. Their experience lies particularly in seasonal outlooks and climate. Collectively, they have 20 years of experience in climate. Robin has worked as a weather forecaster for the Bureau in Darwin, also in England for the UK Met Office. More recently, after specialising in climate prediction services, she has developed a passion for connecting everyone with complex science, finding new ways to interpret and make climate science understandable, usable and accessible to all Australians. Catherine's main focus is reporting on and communicating the current state of the main climate drivers for Australia, as well as the monthly and seasonal rainfall and temperature outlooks. Welcome Robin and Catherine. We're really looking forward to hearing from you today. Robin, would you like to start with recent conditions?
Thank you, Claire. I certainly would. And I just need a little bit of technical help to make my slide move forward. Apologies.
Always, the gremlins get in, that's when we don't need them.
Perfect.
There we go.
Excellent. Okay, let's have a look at rainfall first and let's take a look at what's been happening through winter. So if we look at the map here, we can see for mainland Australia, large parts of the country saw less rainfall than they usually would this winter. And in the east, in particular, rainfall was very low this winter. So a lot of places in the east saw less than half the usual rainfall that they would see during the winter months. And in New South Wales, it was particularly severe, and in particular during July. Rainfall there in July was the lowest it's been in at least 20 years in New South Wales. But in contrast, if we look at southwest Western Australia and southwest Victoria and Western Tasmania, we can see there that rainfall over those locations were more closer than what you'd usually expect during winter. So during winter, we had some very strong and dominant high pressure systems that were stopping our normal rain-bearing systems reaching parts of the southeast. But other areas like southwest Western Australia and Tasmania, they were able to see their normal frontal systems passing through this winter. But I do also want to talk about the rainfall deficits in the east a little bit more because it's not about what's just happened in winter here. If we look a little bit longer, on a longer time frame, we can see that since the start of the year, large parts of eastern Australia have seen very much below average rainfall, and in some places it's been lowest on record. The Murray-Darling Basin had its third driest January to August on record. It was the fourth driest for New South Wales, and the driest there it's been since 1965. So what about temperature? I thought we'd have a look at daytime temperatures to start with, and let's look at winter again. It's not just been very dry in the east, it's also been unusually warm during the day. In fact, it's been warm almost everywhere in Australia during the day, warmer than average during winter, but very much so in the east, with a record-breaking winter there for some areas near the New South Wales-Queensland border. So with low rainfall combined with warm temperatures, this has really, it's really increased the impact of the drought that we've seen develop in parts of eastern Australia. And again, with temperatures, this is not just about what's happened during winter. This is something that's been happening over a longer period for large parts of Australia. So if we look at what temperatures during the daytime have been like since the start of the year, all of those areas on the map there which are orange, so through Central Australia and through Eastern Australia, are where it's been record highest for daytime temperatures since the start of the year. So it's the warmest for Australia for this period on record, but also for South Australia, New South Wales and Victoria. Now, some of you may be thinking, that's not right, it felt so cold. And that's because it actually was. It was winter, but also it was unusually cold overnight this winter in many locations. And that's something that's not unusual to happen when you have low rainfall and clear skies. So drought in Australia is often associated with very cold nights and frost. So this year we have over winter time seen that happen for large parts of the country. It's also been unusually windy this winter. So most of South Australia had its windiest August in at least 10 years, and Victoria as well in July. So we've had a bit of a wind chill effect as well. So while the days have been warmer than average, it's felt quite cold this winter, and it has been very cold overnight. So what does all this mean for soil moisture? So as you would expect, if we look at the soil moisture map, large parts of the country, and particularly those areas in the east there, have got soil moisture has dropped right off, and it's much lower than it usually is at this time of the year, and in some cases it's lowest on record. So this is a combination, of course, of the low rainfall and the high temperatures, but also that windiness as well. But in contrast, if you look at those areas that did see rainfall more typical, so in southwest Western Australia, southwestern Victoria and Tasmania, soil moisture is much closer to what you would typically expect at this time of the year, and in some cases wetter. So what does this mean for our water storages? So this map here is quite complicated, so I've put a little bit of a link down the bottom there so that when you have some time and an interest, you can also take a look in more detail. But I can talk you through a few of the locations here. Each of the little maps for each location, the graph there shows how water storage levels have changed over the past 3 years. And at the end, you can see where it currently is, and the red line marks where we were this time last year. So if we look in the east where we've seen that low rainfall, you can see a downward trend in water storages, with water storages now lower than they've been at any time in at least the last 3 years, and also lower than this time last year. But if we look where we've had better winter rainfall in, say, Tasmania and southwest Western Australia there, you can see it's an opposite story, with the water storages on an upward trend in the last 3 years and doing quite well compared to last year. So as I said, you've got a link there so you can look at this in more detail if you like.
That's good, isn't it? People can check their water storages as they go.
Exactly. Keep up to date. What I'm showing here now is a map that talks about how our vegetation is going in Australia. So if it was green, that would be, we're seeing vegetation being a lot more greener than usual, but what we see now is a lot of browns on this map, and particularly over New South Wales. So vegetation is a lot drier than usual. So this is indicating, obviously, that we're not seeing the growth that we normally would at this time of the year, but this also has implications for bushfire weather to do with the dryness of the curing of the fuels that we have around the country. If we take a closer look at what's been happening with bushfires so far this year, this map that we're showing here is of Forest Fire Danger Index. So this is an index that looks at all of the ingredients from a weather perspective that go into conditions conducive to bushfires. So we can see, if we look at the winter, we've got a lot of oranges and dark orange there. That's where bushfire weather has been particularly severe for this time of the year. So the conditions we saw as winter ended in New South Wales were what you would typically expect at the end of spring. So our bushfire season has already started in New South Wales. There's been a number of fires break out already in August, and this is this start to the bushfire season in that area is 2 months earlier than what you would usually expect. So I guess to summarise, before we're going to move on in a minute to a bit of a poll, but I guess to summarise what this means going forward into spring, where the bushfire season's already started, and we're in a really low base in a lot of areas for Australia for rainfall. The landscape is significantly drier than usual. So this means going into spring, any heat waves that we have or further deficits in rainfall is going to have a bigger impact than it would have had we not had such a dry winter for large parts of the country. But some parts of the country have fared okay.
Good news. Thanks, Robin. So, as Robin said, we're going to jump into a poll. You can see the question here. What is your biggest climate focus this spring? So this will just give us a bit of a sense of our participants, what kind of thing you're concerned about, thinking about, just want to know more about, what will help you make decisions for your business this coming season. So I'll open the poll now. You can see the questions there, and if you should pop up on your screen, and if you want to give us your answer. So the question is, what is your biggest climate focus this spring? The options are rainfall, temperature, frost, soil moisture, and other. And for other, please tell us in the chat box if there's something else you're, dying to know about. So, ladies, what do you think might be the biggest concern for people?
My instinct is to say rainfall, but I think temperature and frost could be one of the sleepers.
Might be. We've got about over 200 people with us online at the moment, so we'd love to see your responses. We're going to keep this poll open for about 5 minutes. If anyone has any other questions while we're just waiting for the poll results, we'd love you to send them in via the chat function as well. Can I ask a question of my own? I know that we've had a bumper snow season in New South Wales and managed to have drought at the same time, which kind of seems a bit weird. So how do those two go together?
Well, it's interesting you ask that. In terms of the snow season, the key factor for the Australian region is they need cooler overnight conditions, because if it's not cold enough, you're not getting snow forming. So if you're getting precipitation from the air, it doesn't matter if it's rain, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's too warm,
it just won't happen, will it?
Yeah.
Thanks, Catherine, that's awesome. We're getting a few questions from our group, so thank you very much. The question from Krista, is it possible to get access to FFDI data?
Not at the moment. We don't have it on our website at the moment. But please do contact us. We'll have some contact emails at the end, and there are a few other options that we have to be able to share that information.
Perfect. We've got a few people who are interested in FFDI, so you might see that email come through. Yep. Robertson's telling us that his focus is snow melt and snowy storages. So the good news is there's lots of snow up there to melt, so that's a good start. Stephen's also telling us his concern is fire danger ratings. Jeff's telling us coastal inclement weather conditions.
Inclement.
Oh, inclement, that's my fault. It's my fault. I think it's a bit wet on the East Coast this week. That might just be a bit of a one-off, yeah? Cool. Please make sure that you tell us in the poll if you're A, B, C or D. I think we've got a couple more minutes to go, yeah? Ella, do we have any other questions coming through in our chat function while we're just waiting for the polling results?
No, I don't think we've got any other questions. There's a couple more comments of what people are interested in. Someone is a journalist for RACV Royal Auto Magazine, so their interest is Victoria's water storage, how it will be affected over summer. But I think we're about to close the polling. So we've got 75% who have answered. That's great.
To our journalist friend, we also have an email that you can use to the Bureau, which is media@bom.gov.au. So if you could send that question, our media team would be happy to help you out with that one. So Caroline, what are our polling results?
Well, it actually just says it's waiting for a few more people to submit their responses, so it's giving you 10 more seconds to give your answer.
We've had 166 people reply out of our 200 odd attendees.
And so far, the biggest by far has been rainfall with a whopping 77%. Now, I'll just see, I can probably share it with all of you, maybe. But is that what you expected? I guess you thought frost or soil moisture could be a quiet contender, but it does seem like rainfall.
It's not surprising. I think temperature and rainfall at the moment is quite closely related when we talk about drought, because obviously when we have low rainfall and high temperatures occur at the same time, that's caused us to have record high evaporation this winter.
And the concern for fire as well.
And
that people were telling us in other.
Yeah.
Okay, Catherine, I think you're our second speaker on the topics of climate outlooks and drivers.
Sure thing. Let me just get rid of this poll.
Yeah, the poll's showing up. So the poll pops up on everyone's screen once everyone's finished and it's closed off.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Okay, so some of you may have heard there's a possibility of El Nino developing. So let's firstly just take a quick refresher on what El Nino is. In a normal situation, we have steady trade winds that blow across the tropical Pacific from east to the west, and these winds pile up warm water in the western Pacific. This then draws up cooler water from below the surface in the eastern Pacific. However, during El Nino, the trade winds weaken or even reverse, allowing warmer waters to slosh back towards the east and draw moisture away from the western Pacific region. This then weakens the circulation above the water and helps set up a positive feedback loop between the ocean and atmosphere. And once this feedback starts, El Nino has set in. So at the moment, waters are close to average or just slightly warmer across the equator in the Pacific Ocean. We monitor the Nino 3-4 region, which is that box drawn on the image, to look at signs of El Nino developing. On the right-hand side, these are the average forecasts from the different international models for the region. So by November, all models think that we will be in El Nino territory, but only just. And this is actually quite late in the year for development. Our ENVO outlook is currently sitting at El Nino watch, which means models suggest that an event will form, and there are also some signs that El Nino may be developing in the observations. Once we've reached El Nino watch, this means we have about a 50% chance of it developing. However, it also means a 50% chance of it not developing. So I believe we have another poll.
We do. We just want to check what people understand about El Nino, so we're just going to take another quick poll. Hopefully Caroline can get that started for us. So the question today is, how does El Nino influence Australian climate? We have 4 different responses. Number A is warmer and drier than average for Australia. Number B is drier than average in the east with warmer in the south. C is drier in the southwest and cooler elsewhere. And D is wetter than average in the north and east, but warmer days in the south. So Caroline's going to bring up that poll for us. You can tell us in the chat. No, we're having a couple of issues with our poll.
While they're trying to suss that out, the other thing that's worth noting is that while we have definitions for El Nino, no 2 events and no 2 sets of effects are exactly the same. We do know what we see on average. We also know some effects will emerge as an El Nino event is developing.
Thank you. We had a couple of other outstanding questions from our question session we didn't quite get to. Ian Foster tells us that for his cropping in WA, he's most concerned about frost. So I think we've got something coming up on that. Alistair was asking about conversion of snow in New South Wales to runoff.
That's a tricky question. So I guess we're going to have some, so we're going to go into our rainfall and temperature outlooks in a second. Maybe we should delay that question and we can have a look at what the outlook actually says.
Absolutely, and if it's beyond scope, by all means contact us on the email afterwards. So Caroline's been able to launch the poll, so we'll give that a couple of minutes. We've got 238 people online with us. Thanks for being here. So if you let us know what you think El Nino is, well, our experts in the room will make sure that you're on the right track. We also had a question from Graham Anderson asking about rainfall less evaporation maps that I know that we have had a go at internally. I'm not sure if they're available externally.
No, we don't have them available externally, but once again, do contact us after we're finished on the web address, because we do have there are other ways that we can get information to you. But this is really good to know these queries about what people do want, so we can keep a list here, because we're always looking at new things that we should be putting on our website and getting information to people quicker and in an easier way than having to email us.
Thanks, Robin. There's a question from Dean. He's asking, when will you know we are officially in an El Nino? Maybe Catherine would like to have a go at that.
Sure. We are a fair way off being officially in an El Nino event. Usually you would expect the waters in the tropical Pacific region to be at least 0.8 degrees warmer than normal. So they need to warm by at least half a degree at the moment to get there. We also need to see some response in the atmosphere to see this positive feedback loop. So at this point in time, we haven't really seen too much from the atmosphere, and I think that might be what ultimately decides if we get into an El Nino event this year. What do you think, Robin?
Yeah, I think we'll be watching really closely over the coming weeks. It's starting to get very late in the year to get an El Nino event, so I think being at a 50% chance of El Nino is a pretty accurate place to be. Like, it could go either way at this point. But what happens over the next weeks to months in terms of does the atmosphere kick in and help give everything the push it needs to go into El Nino, that's what we're watching for very closely.
Thanks, ladies. We're having a couple, we might ask if we'll stop and close off the poll. We're having a couple of technical hitches, so hopefully the results will pop up, but we will continue because Catherine was kind enough to give us the answers on the next slide.
Sure. Sorry, it seems to be after the poll, but we have trouble clicking ahead. I don't know if we're able to share the results of the poll.
Well, hopefully they'll be shared soon, but if you haven't already answered and it's not closed off, the answer's going to be here for you. Oh, and there's the results. Here they are. See that? There they are. Oh, so how climate literate are our audience? Did our users get the answers right?
If they,
well, 50-50 split.
B is correct, but A is very close to being correct. So the fact that most people got those two, I think, is very good.
Well, that's very encouraging. Excellent. We've got some switched on listeners today.
Yes. So,
well done, everybody.
So typically we see dry conditions across much of the east during the winter, spring months. And we also see a delayed start to the wet season for parts of the north. Usually, I like to show these winter-spring maps because the pattern's a bit more coherent than just the spring ones. But I think that shows the pattern even if we were in spring. And we also see above average daytime temperatures during winter-spring as well. You can see the signal's a bit stronger in the southeast compared to the western part, but you can see it even spreads right across to southern WA. The other thing that we see is a longer frost risk season. So as Robin was discussing, with drier conditions and warmer days, you often get cool, clear nights and a chance of frost. And we can also, for those up north, typically see fewer cyclones. So there's a similar type of driver in the Indian Ocean. Fewer people have heard of the Indian Ocean dipole, and we have some signs of a positive phase developing.
We just got a question. Are you going to touch on IOD as well? Great timing.
So a positive Indian Ocean dipole, or IOD, similarly to El Nino, draws the warmer tropical waters and moisture away from the Australian region. So about half of the climate models suggest a brief positive Indian Ocean dipole event will form during spring. Typically, a positive IOD brings drier conditions to much of southern and central Australia. The one thing to note about the IOD is that as the monsoon sets in Australia, it can no longer, the setup can no longer form and the event finishes. So we don't actually see any influence from the IOD during the summer months. But the unfortunate thing is that if you combine both El Nino and a positive IOD, they actually can amplify and spread their effect across a broader area of Australia. So it means we're keeping a very close eye on things at the moment. So what do our climate outlooks suggest for spring? So from left to right, we have maximum temperatures, minimum temperatures, and rainfall. For those interested in accuracy, the little green maps show the accuracy of the spring outlooks. And the green...
little, I think I've got glasses on everyone, but there's lots of green on those maps, so
yeah,
very green sign, right?
Yes, the greener the better. So if we take a look at rainfall, we can see that many parts of southern and central Australia are in the brownie colours, which means a drier than average spring is more likely. So sadly, this means an expected continuation for below average rainfall. The reddish colours on the left show warmer than average spring days are likely for the whole country, and similarly for nights. However, areas surrounding the Great Australian Bight have roughly equal chances of having warmer or cooler than average nights. So that's the white bits. There is some variation hidden by the seasonal maps. If we take a look at September, we can see the drier conditions are expected across large parts of the east and also a broader area in the west. And while large parts of the country were likely to have warmer spring nights, there's generally an equal chance of being warmer or cooler for nights for September as a whole. So what this means is that there is also still a possibility of spring frosts in those cool, clear, still nights. So keep a close eye on things. We actually also have a frost potential weather forecast for those interested, and that's that second link at the bottom there.
And that was our question from Ian in cropping in WA.
And you can also see depends how close Ian is to Perth, but you can see for September there is an increased chance of cooler nights for parts of southwest WA.
Got it, the blue blobs. Thank you.
So finally to stream flow forecasts, and with warmer and drier conditions for much of the east in 2018 and also an expected continuation of such conditions, low flows are likely across large parts of the southern mainland for August to October. Tasmania, on the other hand, having had quite a bit of rainfall, have high flows likely. But please note that this forecast is due to be updated sometime in the next week with the spring outlook, so stay tuned to get an update.
Thanks, Catherine, and we're up to our next question and answer session. We've had a great question from Daryl. Daryl asks, so only a 50% chance of El Nino, so no official El Nino for now, but very dry already. Do we spend too much time talking about El Nino? Why do we keep talking about it, ladies?
It's a really good question.
Isn't it?
So El Nino definitely does not describe all of the variability in our climate at all. And so our outlook from AccessS indicates that it's likely to be warmer than average, irrelevant of whether we go into El Nino or not. That's just what the probability is from our dynamical model. So the way we make an assessment on the climate drivers is slightly different. We look at multi-models, and so it's a different process. So climate drivers aside, the risk is there for spring that'll be drier than average. And yeah, no, not all of our variability is explained by El Nino or the positive IODs. It can be quite complex, and there's a little bit of chaos in there as well. That's why we give a probability forecast, really, to factor in that chaos as well.
And the other thing that's probably worth noting is that whatever it is, the other international models are also suggesting drier conditions. So we have a fair bit of confidence in this outlook.
Thank you. We've had a great question from David as well. I'm interested in what El Nino would be likely to do to onshore wind conditions in South Australia. Is that a dust storm concern, possibly?
Oh, that's a tricky question to answer. Right, that might be one that we might need to think about and have a look at the local effects there. So when you do see changes in the subtropical ridge during El Nino, so we tend to see stronger tropical ridge and a change in where it sits, which can have an influence on locally on winds and onshore or offshore flow. But I don't know the answer off the top of my head to that one. We'd have to do a little case study and have a look at that one.
Fantastic. And for those people who don't know, we have a product that updates every 2 weeks on these sorts of things. Do you want to tell us about that? Sorry, about El Nino updates. ENSO updates.
Yeah, so we'll put a link at the end as well. We do, so our outlook is updated twice a month, but also what we call the ENSO wrap-up. And that's where we talk in a little bit more detail about what might happen with El Nino or the IOD.
Thank you. So we seem to be getting lots of questions on water storages. We're good at climate and we know a little bit about water. Do you have any comments on how that might go for the next few months?
I think so the outlook is unfortunately looking like it will be drier than average for most locations across the country.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a bit of variation in there, and if you look along the east, actually along the coast, it's more west of the divide, and it's not along the coast that we see a signal. So just very broadly, that's not a particularly good outlook for filling in that region. But some other areas of the country have fared okay. We've probably spent a lot of time talking about the drought because it's quite topical, but as we said in Western Australia and Tasmania, some other parts of the country, they've had good rainfall and their stream flows there are looking, we're expecting above average. So we do have quite an extensive water part to our website where you can go there and have a look around and look through the outlooks and the information there as well.
Thanks. Thank you. Another question from Dave. What did skill scores refer to in stream flow forecast?
I forgot to touch on that, so I'll just go back to that slide, I hope. So the map here on the right is the accuracy, and similarly to our seasonal outlooks, this shows how well the stream flows perform. So like our maps, the greener the better. So you can see that quite a lot of the southern parts of the country and in the north as well have the mid to deep green. So yeah, I hope
so that performed okay.
Yeah, the green is good in these maps, yeah?
Yes.
Thank you. We had another question about dust storms over summer.
Yeah, so we've got an increased risk of dust this year because the landscape's just so dry, the vegetation's so dry, and in some cases the land is bare now and the pasture's gone. So, so this spring and summer, I think it's fair to say, especially with the outlook, it looks like there'll be an increased chance that we'll see dust storms this year. We've already seen some, actually.
Yeah, we have. We're getting heaps of questions. We'll do what we can. Let's take a few more. From Jennifer, can we get a comment on potential SAM influences? Does it matter this time of year?
Yes, SAM can have an influence at any time of the year.
What is SAM? For our listeners who don't know.
So the southern annular mode, just briefly, that's sort of describes whether those rainbearing westerlies are sitting further north or further south than normal. So we, with the southern annular mode, we can get an indication for a week or 2 or 3 ahead what that might do. So this is a bit of a transitional period, but if you do have a negative SAM, that's when you see, I'll actually get that right, drier. And if it's positive, we tend to see those more fronts come across. So there was a little brief period through August where we did have some more fronts and troughs coming across. So Tassie got a lot of rainfall in parts of the southwest around the Bight there, which was possibly SAM related. But it's a fairly neutral outlook, I think, at the moment. We're really, in terms of the main influences on the outlook, it's this potential for El Nino and the positive IOD.
Yes, thank you. Donald's asked, do we have any figures to illustrate forecast September frost risk?
So we've got, we have the link, our agricultural link to the frost potential, which can give you an indication, but that's a few days out. Otherwise, so I know there was a lot of white on that map, but I think when we have an indication that it's going to be drier than usual and we're going to see less clouds than usual, it just elevates the risk. So, but in terms of specific what's going to happen on specific days, we really only look out for a few days in advance there.
Thank you. This is more a comment than a question, but because I'm a Melbourne girl, Dean's asking, what will the weather be like on the grand final day? I'm just planning ahead.
Download the Bomb Weather app.
Oh, that's good.
And then when we get, in the right time frame there, you'll get an excellent forecast.
Go Tigers. Mel, Robin, you had some news for us on the new high definition model.
Yes. So we've made some significant changes to our service over the last year that some might be aware of, but others not. We now update our outlooks more frequently. We do that twice a month now, but more recently, we've implemented a brand new cutting-edge model to create that generated our climate outlook. So this model is a much higher resolution model than our previous model. So I lost them. It calculates forecast at 60-kilometre resolution instead of 250-kilometre resolution, which is a huge change, and we could only do that because of the increase in supercomputing power that we get from Australis, our new supercomputer that we had installed a few years ago, which was 16 times more powerful than our previous model. So we're crunching a heap more data than we were a month ago to give you much more localised information. And just to give an example, this is the difference in the forecast that you get from our old model to our new model that's been in operation now since mid-August.
Way more detail, huh?
Absolutely, and if you look especially along the Great Dividing, we can see the Great Dividing Range and how weather varies on either side of that Great Dividing Range. So yes, we're pretty excited about it, to say the least.
We should be, and we get some better and more accurate information from our users, so that's great. So you wanted to summarise your talk now, Robin?
Yes, so just to, because we're running out of time now, but so the main messages I think to take away from today is that unfortunately it does look like spring is likely to be drier than average for much of the country. Warmer than usual days are expected, but that frost risk continues with a risk of cold nights with clear skies. That by the end of spring, it does look like nights will also be likely to be warmer than average. But that risk is definitely there in the beginning of spring. We may see El Nino. It's about a 50% chance at the moment. And there's also a risk that we'll see a positive Indian Ocean dipole develop, but we're keeping a very close eye on that. And as we said before, irrelevant of whether they evolve or not, we do have a strong indication that it will be drier than average this spring, unfortunately, for those that are desperate for rainfall.
The other thing that's worth noting is that in about an hour's time, the seasonal bushfire outlook for Southern Australia is due to be released.
So the people looking at FFDIs and fire potential will be looking for that too, and that's available on a different website, not ours, right?
Bushfire and Natural Hazards CRC.
Thank you, ladies. So thank you everyone for joining us. We've had a great first spring Outlook webinar. We have our next Outlook webinar planned for summertime, for the Thursday, the 6th of December. So we'll get to that when we can. I'm sorry, I've jumped ahead in my notes. I think you wanted to just go through more information, Robin?
No, that's okay.
Do a quick read through, and particularly that email at the bottom. We've had a few questions we weren't able to get to today, so maybe they can send them in to us via that email.
Yeah, so we've put a couple of handy links in there, and you can see the email address that you can use so we can get to your question if we didn't get to it today. And we've also got our hashtag there if you want to talk about today on social media with us.
And that all-important email is helpdesk.climate@bom.gov.au. Particularly Sergio sent us in quite a great question that probably would take a little bit of time to answer. So now I'd like to tell you about our next webinar, which will be held on Thursday the 6th of December. That will be our Outlook for Summer. That brings us to the end of our webinar today, ladies and gentlemen. So a very big thank you to Robin and Catherine for your time in developing the content and sharing your wisdom with us today. To our audience of about 200 odd participants, we're thrilled that you joined us and hope that you will join us again for our Summer Outlook webinar. We hope you enjoyed the session, and that if you'd like to continue the conversation, please use the hashtag #BOMWebinars in your LinkedIn posts. As mentioned earlier, this session has been recorded, and we will have the video ready for your on-demand viewing pleasure in the next few days, so watch this space. Finally, but most importantly, we really value your feedback. This is a new thing for us, so we'd love for you to tell us more of what you'd like to know about. It is our aim to bring you the highest possible quality webinars. Once we close this webinar, a short survey will pop up on your screen, and we'd be very grateful to you if you could complete that for us anonymously. So once again, thank you to everyone who's joined us today, and we look forward to you joining us for our next one in December, on the 6th of December. So goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye.